When my 15-year-old son stood up in that courtroom and asked the judge if he could read his father's letter out loud, I watched my ex-husband's face turn white as paper. What my son said next destroyed 3 years of lies and changed our lives forever. I'm Maya Chen, and 3 years ago I thought the hardest part of my divorce was over. I was wrong. Dead wrong. What I didn't know was that my ex-husband's family had been whispering behind my back for years, planting seeds of doubt about the one thing I never thought they'd question, whether my son Tyler was actually Brad's child. Let me paint you a picture of the people in this story, because understanding who they are makes what happened in that courtroom even more shocking. Tyler is my everything. At 15, he's got this quiet strength that honestly amazes me sometimes. He's tall for his age, with dark hair that catches the light, and these incredible amber eyes that seem to see right through people's nonsense. He looks like me, mixed Asian and white, but he's got his father's stubborn jawline and the same way of tilting his head when he's thinking hard about something. At least, that's what I always told myself. Then there's Brad Morrison, my ex-husband. 36 years old, works construction, and honestly, he used to be a good man. We met when I was 24, and he was this charming guy who could make me laugh until my sides hurt. He's got those classic all-American looks, blonde hair, blue eyes, broad shoulders from years of physical work. When we divorced, I thought our biggest problem was going to be figuring out custody schedules and child support payments. I never imagined his family would turn our son into a weapon against me. Brad's mother, Carol Morrison, is 62 and retired from being a school principal. During our marriage, she was actually pretty good to me. She'd invite me to family dinners, ask about my job, and even helped me pick out Tyler's first Halloween costume. But something changed after the divorce. Maybe it was loyalty to her son, or maybe she'd always had these suspicions and just kept them buried while we were married. Carol is the type of woman who speaks with authority. When she talks, people listen. She's got this way of making statements that sound like facts, even when they're just her opinions. And then there's Jake Morrison, Brad's 28-year-old cousin. Jake works as a mechanic and has always been the family troublemaker. He's the guy who shows up to every family gathering with some drama or gossip, stirring the pot just to see what happens. Jake never liked me, even during the good times. I think he saw me as an outsider who didn't fit into their tight-knit family dynamic. He's got this smirk that makes you want to slap it right off his face, and unfortunately, he's also got Carol's ear. The thing is, I never saw this coming. Sure, I noticed some weird comments over the years, little things like Carol saying, "Tyler's got such unique features," or Jake making jokes about how Tyler didn't inherit the Morrison blue eyes. But I figured that was just normal family banter. My own mother always said I looked nothing like my father, and nobody questioned my paternity. What I didn't realize was that these weren't innocent observations. They were building a case against me, collecting evidence in their minds that Tyler couldn't possibly be Brad's son. And Brad, my spineless ex-husband, was apparently listening to every word instead of defending his own child. The morning that changed everything started like any other court day. I put on my best blazer, the navy blue one that makes me look professional and put together even when I'm falling apart inside. I rehearsed what I was going to say to the judge about needing consistent child support payments. Tyler was supposed to wait in the hallway while we discussed financial arrangements. But Tyler had been carrying a secret that none of us knew about. He'd found something that would expose the truth about what his father really thought, what his grandmother really believed, and what his family had been hiding from him for months. When Tyler stood up in that courtroom, folder in hand, and asked if he could read something out loud, I thought he was going to embarrass himself. I had no idea he was about to save us both and change everything we thought we knew about family, loyalty, and what it really means to fight for the people you love. This is the story of how my teenage son became the bravest person in the room and taught a bunch of adults what real courage looks like. Let me take you back to where this all really started. 3 years ago, when Brad and I signed those divorce papers, I actually felt relieved. I thought the hard part was over. We'd agreed on custody, worked out child support, and I genuinely believed we could co-parent like civilized adults. Boy, was I naive. Brad was supposed to pay $800 a month in child support. Not a fortune, but enough to help with Tyler's school supplies, clothes, and all those random expenses that come with raising a teenager. For the first 6 months, he was pretty consistent. Then he met Jessica, his new girlfriend, and suddenly everything changed. "Maya, I need to talk to you about the payments," Brad said during one of our awkward custody exchanges in the Target parking lot. Tyler was grabbing his backpack from Brad's truck, probably pretending not to listen. "Jessica and I are looking at getting married, and honestly, money's tight right now. Construction work isn't what it used to be." Just like that, my 800 became 300. When I protested, Brad's response was always the same: "Take me to court if you don't like it." So that's exactly what I did, over and over again, watching legal fees eat up whatever extra money I managed to scrape together. I started working weekends, catering weddings and corporate events, hauling heavy trays and serving fancy appetizers to people who probably spent more on one dinner than I made in a week. My weekdays were spent at my marketing job, trying to look professional while calculating in my head whether I could afford Tyler's soccer cleats or if they'd have to wait another month. The worst part wasn't even the money, though. It was watching Tyler's relationship with his father slowly crumble. Brad would promise to pick him up for dinner and then text 30 minutes later with some excuse about work running late. He'd commit to Tyler's soccer games and then show up halfway through, if at all, usually with Jessica attached to his arm like some kind of decoration. "Mom, can I just skip going to Dad's this weekend?" Tyler asked me one Thursday evening while doing homework at our kitchen table. He was working on an algebra problem, pencil tapping against the paper the same way Brad used to do when he was concentrating. He's probably just going to cancel anyway. The kid was right more often than not. But what hurt even more was seeing how Brad's family treated us during those awkward custody handovers. Carol, who used to hug me and ask about my job, started giving me these tight-lipped smiles and formal nods. Our conversations went from genuine catch-ups to basic logistics. "Tyler, sweetheart, you're getting so tall," Carol would say, but there was something different in her voice, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. She'd study his face like she was looking for something specific, and when she didn't find it, this little frown would appear between her eyebrows. Jake was even worse. He'd make these comments that seemed innocent on the surface, but felt like tiny needles under my skin. "Tyler's got such interesting features," he'd say, or "He really doesn't look like the rest of the Morrison men, does he?" When Tyler would smile or laugh, Jake would tilt his head and say things like, "Huh, that's funny. He doesn't have the Morrison dimples either." I started keeping a mental catalog of these comments, telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they were just observing normal family traits. Maybe I was reading too much into innocent conversation. But deep down, something felt wrong. The way they looked at Tyler, like they were solving a puzzle he didn't even know he was part of. Tyler seemed oblivious to the undercurrents, but I noticed he started talking less during family gatherings. He'd sit quietly while his cousins chattered, playing games on his phone instead of joining conversations. When Brad would introduce him to new people, Tyler would just give a polite nod instead of his usual friendly smile. "Is everything okay with you and Dad's family?" I asked him one night after a particularly awkward birthday party for Carol. Tyler shrugged, not looking up from his homework. "They're fine, I guess. Just weird sometimes. Like they're all sharing some inside joke I'm not part of." If only I'd known then that it wasn't a joke at all. It was a theory they'd been building, piece by piece, comment by comment for 3 solid years, and they were just waiting for the right moment to destroy us with it. The day everything exploded was supposed to be routine, just another boring child support modification hearing at the county courthouse. I'd been through this dance before, sitting in those uncomfortable wooden chairs, listening to lawyers argue about monthly payment amounts like they're negotiating the price of a used car. I wore my lucky blazer again, the navy blue one, and brought a folder full of Tyler's expenses: soccer registration fees, school supplies, doctor visits, new shoes, because teenage boys apparently grow out of everything overnight. I had spreadsheets, receipts, everything organized, because I'd learned the hard way that being prepared was my only weapon in these legal battles. Tyler came with me that day, which wasn't unusual. At 15, he was old enough to understand what these hearings meant for our family's future. He sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, earbuds in, probably listening to music or playing some game on his phone. Just a normal Tuesday morning for us. Brad showed up 20 minutes late, which was typical. He walked in with his lawyer, Mr. Henderson, a guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Brad avoided eye contact with me, which had become his standard operating procedure over the past year. His hair was shorter than usual, and he was wearing a button-down shirt that actually looked ironed. Jessica's influence, probably. "Sorry we're late, Your Honor," Brad's lawyer said. "Traffic was unexpected." The judge, a stern woman in her 50s who'd presided over our previous hearings, looked annoyed but gestured for everyone to take their seats. "Let's get started. Ms. Chen, I understand you're seeking an increase in child support payments." I stood up, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Morrison's current payments don't cover half of Tyler's actual expenses, and his construction business has been doing well according to his social media posts." I couldn't help adding that last part. Brad was always posting photos of new work trucks and vacation trips with Jessica. That's when things took a weird turn. Brad's lawyer cleared his throat and said something that made my blood run cold. "Your Honor, my client would like to address some concerns about the appropriateness of the current support arrangement given certain family circumstances that have come to light." Family circumstances? What the hell did that mean? The judge called for a 15-minute recess, and I figured it was just standard legal maneuvering. But as soon as we stepped into the hallway, I knew something was very wrong. Carol and Jake were there, sitting on a bench near the water fountain like they'd been waiting for us. Carol stood up first, smoothing down her gray pantsuit. She had this look on her face that I'd never seen before, determined, almost righteous. "Maya, we need to talk." "Now's not really a good time, Carol," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Tyler was still sitting about 20 feet away, but I could see him glancing over at us. "Actually, now is the perfect time," Jake said, standing up next to his aunt. He had that smirk again, the one that made my skin crawl. "We've been discussing this as a family, and we think it's time to address the elephant in the room." My stomach dropped. "What elephant?" Carol took a deep breath like she was preparing for something she'd rehearsed. "Maya, I've held my tongue for years because I didn't want to cause problems, but that boy looks nothing like my son." The hallway suddenly felt like it was spinning. "Excuse me?" "Tyler," Carol continued, her voice getting stronger. "He doesn't have Brad's eyes. He doesn't have our family's bone structure. He doesn't even have our mannerisms. I've been watching Maya, and I just don't see the resemblance." Jake jumped in like he'd been waiting for his cue. "Come on, Maya. We all know Brad probably isn't Tyler's real father. Look at him. He looks nothing like any of us Morrisons. Why should Brad keep paying for another man's kid?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my hands start shaking, and my vision got a little blurry around the edges. "How dare you?" I whispered. "If you're so sure Tyler is Brad's son," Carol said, crossing her arms, "then you won't mind a DNA test, will you? Because frankly, I've never seen the resemblance, and neither has anyone else in our family." I looked over at Tyler, who had taken out his earbuds and was staring at us with this confused, hurt expression on his face. He'd heard every word. That's when I realized this wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. They'd coordinated this attack, chosen this moment when we were most vulnerable, in a public place where I couldn't fall apart without embarrassing myself and my son. "Fine," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "We'll do your damn test." The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. "Fine, we'll do your damn test." But as soon as I said it, I wanted to take it back. Not because I had any doubt about Tyler's parentage, but because agreeing to their demand felt like letting them win some twisted game I didn't even know we were playing. Carol's face lit up with this satisfied smile that made me want to slap her. "Good. I think that's the right decision for everyone involved." Jake actually laughed. "Finally, some honesty. This should be interesting." I looked over at Tyler, who was walking toward us now, his face pale and confused. "Mom, what's going on? What test?" Before I could answer, Carol stepped forward. "Tyler, sweetheart, we're just going to do a simple DNA test to clear up some questions. Nothing for you to worry about." The way she said it, so sweet and grandmotherly, made my skin crawl. Tyler looked between her and me, clearly not buying the casual tone. "Questions about what?" "About whether you're really Brad's son," Jake said bluntly, ignoring Carol's warning look. I watched my 15-year-old son's face crumble. Not dramatically, not like in the movies, but in this quiet, devastating way that broke my heart. His shoulders sagged slightly and he just nodded once, like he'd been expecting this his whole life. "Tyler," I started, but he held up his hand. "It's fine, Mom. Let's just do it." The mature way he handled it made me both proud and furious. No kid should have to be that composed when adults are questioning his very identity. We went back into the courtroom, and I had to sit through another hour of legal proceedings while my mind was completely elsewhere. The judge granted a continuance pending the DNA results, which would take about 2 weeks. 2 weeks of wondering, waiting, and watching Tyler pretend like his world hadn't just been turned upside down. That night, I sat Tyler down at our kitchen table with 2 cups of hot chocolate, the way we used to do when he was little and had problems at school. "Talk to me," I said. "How are you feeling about all this?" Tyler stirred his hot chocolate slowly, not meeting my eyes. "Mom, can I ask you something? Anything? Are you sure Dad is my dad?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "Tyler, of course I'm sure. You're his son. I've never been with anyone else during that time period. Never." He finally looked up at me. "Then why do they think I'm not?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "Because people sometimes see what they want to see. Because your grandmother has been looking for reasons to push us out of the family since the divorce. Because your dad's cousin is a troublemaker who likes stirring up drama. But what if—" "There is no what if," I said firmly. "You are Brad Morrison's son. The test is going to prove that, and then they're going to owe us both an apology." Tyler squeezed my hand. "Mom, I know who my dad is, even if he doesn't always act like it. And I know you're telling the truth. Let's just get this over with." The next 2 weeks were torture. I found myself staring at Tyler, looking for resemblances I'd never questioned before. The shape of his nose, the way he laughed, the stubborn set of his jaw when he was determined about something. I started pulling out old photo albums, comparing baby pictures of Tyler to old photos of Brad, building my own evidence collection like I was preparing for war. Tyler seemed to handle it better than I did, at least on the surface. He went to school, did his homework, played soccer like nothing had changed, but I caught him looking in mirrors more often, studying his own face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "I found some old pictures of Dad when he was my age," Tyler said one evening, holding up a photo from one of Brad's family albums. "We actually look pretty similar." He was right. The resemblance was clear in Brad's teenage photos. The same jawline, the same way of standing with one shoulder slightly higher than the other. But what I didn't know was that Tyler was doing his own investigation. While I was collecting photos and preparing for vindication, my son was quietly observing his father's behavior, keeping track of things in ways that would later shock us all. 2 weeks later, we got the call. The results were in, and it was time to go back to court. The courtroom felt different this time. More crowded, more tense. Word had somehow gotten around the Morrison family about what was happening, and I spotted several faces I recognized from family gatherings sitting in the back rows. Great. Now our personal drama was turning into some kind of twisted family entertainment. I sat in my usual spot, wearing that same navy blazer, but this time I felt invincible. I had the DNA results in my purse, and I knew what they said. Tyler was 99.97% confirmed to be Brad's biological son. I was ready to watch Carol and Jake eat their words in front of everyone. Tyler sat beside me, quieter than usual, but not nervous. If anything, he seemed almost expectant, like he was waiting for something specific to happen. I chalked it up to teenage anxiety about being the center of attention. Brad walked in with his lawyer, and for the first time in months, he actually looked me in the eye. There was something different in his expression. Guilt, maybe? Shame? I couldn't quite read it, but he definitely wasn't acting like a man who was about to be vindicated. "All rise," the bailiff announced, and Judge Martinez took her seat. "We're here today for the Morrison Child Support Modification case, pending DNA test results. Mr. Henderson, I believe you have those results." Brad's lawyer stood up, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Yes, Your Honor, the results confirm with 99.97% certainty that Brad Morrison is the biological father of Tyler Chen Morrison." The courtroom was dead silent for about 3 seconds. Then I heard Carol make this small, gasping sound behind me. Jake muttered something under his breath that I couldn't catch. I felt this rush of vindication so powerful it almost made me dizzy. I was right. Tyler was Brad's son, just like I'd known all along. I turned slightly to look at Carol, expecting to see embarrassment, maybe some shame. Instead, I saw her whispering frantically to Jake, both of them looking confused and upset. Not ashamed, upset. Like the results somehow made things worse instead of better. Your Honor? I started to stand up, ready to demand my apology and full child support restoration, but Tyler suddenly got to his feet beside me. Your Honor, can I say something? Judge Martinez looked surprised. Tyler, this is really a matter for the adults to handle. Please. Tyler interrupted, his voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. My dad wrote me a letter after he got these results, but he never gave it to me. I found it in his truck last week when I was getting my soccer bag. Should I read it out loud? The courtroom went completely silent. I stared at my son, my mind racing. What letter? When had Tyler been in Brad's truck? And why did he look so determined, like he'd been planning this moment? Tyler reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It looked like it had been crumpled up and then smoothed out again. Is that okay, Your Honor? Judge Martinez looked as confused as I felt. I suppose if it's relevant to the case. Tyler unfolded the paper with steady hands and began to read in a clear, strong voice that carried to every corner of the courtroom. Tyler, I got the DNA results today. You're my son, just like I always knew you were. I'm sorry I let Mom and Jake put these doubts in my head. I'm sorry I've been a terrible father because I was scared of what they'd say. I don't deserve you, but I want to try to be better. I just don't know how to face everyone now that I know they were wrong about you and wrong about your mother. I was a coward for not standing up for you both. I love you, son. I hope someday you can forgive me. Dad. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned to look at Brad, and he had his face buried in his hands. His shoulders were shaking. Carol looked like she'd been slapped. Her mouth was hanging open and her face had gone completely white. But Tyler wasn't done. He folded the letter carefully and looked directly at his father. Your Honor, I don't want my dad's money if he has to be forced to give it, but I do want him to decide if he wants to be my father or not, because I'm tired of being treated like I'm not good enough for his family. The gavel never came down. Judge Martinez just sat there, staring at my 15-year-old son who had just schooled every adult in that room about courage, truth, and what family really means. Looking back on that day in the courtroom, I realized Tyler didn't just save our family. He taught me what real strength looks like. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the ones who hurt you most. But if you stand firm in your truth and refuse to let others define your worth, justice eventually finds its way to you. Tyler is 17 now, and he still has that same quiet wisdom that shocked everyone in that courtroom. Brad has become the father Tyler always deserved, and Carol spoils him rotten, trying to make up for those 3 years of doubt. As for Jake, well, he keeps his opinions to himself these days. The most important lesson I learned through all of this is that you don't need anyone's permission to know your own worth. You don't need anyone's validation to fight for what's right. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is let the truth speak for itself. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own family struggles, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself or someone you love when everyone else doubted you? Share your story. You might help someone else find the courage they need. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more real-life experiences about family, relationships, and finding strength in difficult situations, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything to me and helps me continue sharing these stories that matter. And don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that they're stronger than they know. Sometimes we all need a reminder that truth wins in the end, even when the journey feels impossible. Thank you for listening to my story. I'll see you in the next video.